Over the years, the youth have been called upon to reawaken the consciousness of Africans through engaging in politics and taking part in building the continent which they dream of. Today, with our guest, Fabrice Lena, who is the Secretary General of Cameroon's Popular Actions Party, he should realize through his political career. Greetings to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Sharon. I'm glad to be your guest. I'm greeting also the millions of Cameroonian young people out there in the different sectors and doing great in their different individual endeavors, be it entertainment, be it entrepreneur, be it politics, civic engagement, diplomacy, administration. Every young person in Cameroon, you deserve to be outstanding. Thanks very much for having me as your guest today.
It's a pleasure. Before we dive right into unfolding what consists of your political career, ladies and gentlemen, we shall take this break, and when we come back, it shall be time for us to get right into discussions. Welcome back, all the televiewers and listeners of For You Media Africa. As I told you, as guest this afternoon, we have Fabrice Lena, who is the Secretary General of the Popular Actions Party. Okay, over to you, sir. Could you enlighten the millions of Cameroonians and Africans on your political trajectory?
Yeah, Sharon, it's been a rough ride. It's not been an easy journey because, you see, our country is a very complex one when it comes to politics. And as a young person, it's not been easy all the way. I started having this admiration for politics, this passion for politics since 2008, when I was still in secondary school by then, but I observed the introduction of the bill at the parliament to uplift a presidential mandate in Cameroon to unlimited renewal. And during this period, there were these conversations among parliamentarians, and one of the persons who struck my attention at that time was Justice Ayah Paul Abine, who refused that he would not vote this bill. And at that time, he was a civilian parliamentarian, and when he refused to vote the bill, you know, he resigned from the ruling party and came to revive the PAP, because actually the PAP was created in 1991. So he revived in 2008. So during this period, I said, wow, this is someone that one could admire. He has some values, some credibility. You know, our context is not easy to resist the bribes and then the swollen envelopes that they give to politicians. So this was also the case with him. So after this period, around the 2014s, I started engaging as a militant of the Popular Action Party while I was in the university in SWA. And during this period, I used to participate in meetings in the different conventions of Yaoundé with my present-day national president, Njang Denis Tabe, who introduced me directly to Justice Ayah Paul and then his administration by then. And I started having direct or indirect encounter with the people that matter, the political leaders. And during this period, there were these conversations about Republican Park coalition preparing for 2018 presidential elections. And I took part in those discussions as a young boy observing and a militant. Because one of the things I appreciate about Popular Action Party is from the moment you declare and make your interest into politics, they give you the opportunity if you have the capacity. You know, there are some basic things that you need in politics in Cameroon, like you have to show the passion for it, you have to show courage, you must be very courageous, and then you have to also show your ability to defend the interests of your people. You know, so those are some of the things that as an individual, when you have, it can align with the Popular Action Party, whose stance is really on a transformative kind of leadership. So this period harnessed me to a new period in Cameroon, that's 2016-17, with the Anglophone crisis that came up. And I also took active part in articulating the grievances of the young people. I also took part in the protest. And when the crisis evolved to the violent phase, myself and the son of Justice Ayah Paul Abine, Ayah, we decided to keep our political caps aside, and then we formed the Ayah Foundation. I worked with the Ayah Foundation for about 14 months, that's a year and a half. And during this period, it was also tough because we were dealing with the Ayah Foundation at the same time with the arrest of Justice Ayah Paul at Set, who he spent during that time about 224 days, that's 8 months there. So it was fairly tough period, and we were organizing a lot of press conferences, we were organizing meetings in Yaoundé, facing intimidation, persecution, arrest and release. I think I've been arrested about 4 times since I started politics, and I've been at cell, like they have kept me for about 6 hours, and then I've been questioned at cell twice. So it's those experiences that made me to become the learner that I am today, able to dare, able to challenge, able to take challenges. And during this period, I also volunteered for the Stand Up for Cameroon movement of Edith Kah Walla, that she is the coordinator. We did a lot of things in Stand Up for Cameroon, like training Cameroonians on civic engagement, political participation, how to do non-violent manifestations and to discourage violent manifestations, and how to tackle dictatorship, and how to encourage young people to take up their responsibilities, know their basic rights, understand their country, their constitution, rules and regulations governing, and how to deal with the oppressive nature of authorities as political opponents. Yeah, this fairly gave me that aspect of youth civic engagement, understanding revolutions in Africa and also in Cameroon context, how to carry out protests and how to articulate our grievances without necessarily going violent. And then by 2019-20, with the different events that happened in Cameroon, PAP had to organize itself as a party with the resignation of Justice Ayah Paul Abine at the head, because the constitution of the party is clear about mandate limits, and therefore he still had the ability to renew, but he said because of age and because he has already performed his own duty as the chairman of the party for 9 years, and because he feels that it is time for him to leave the party and give opportunity to youth, he resigned, and a convention was held in Yaoundé, and the national president, Njang Denis Tabe, was elected, and myself as the Secretary General of the Popular Action Party. So we were inaugurated and we took office officially in June 2020. That's when I began my mandate, and then I started now training young people on leadership, civic engagement, political participation, and directly or indirectly encountering political actors and making my own contribution to nation building.
Okay, so we've got this whole page, this whole picture of who Fabrice Lena is. And now it's been over 10 years since 2008, since you commenced this journey. How tough has it been? What have been the challenges you've encountered so far?
Yeah, the challenges are enormous. Like I said, the first thing you will get as a young person when you say you are going into Cameroon politics is discouragement. You get a lot of discouragement statements like, it's dangerous, you're going to get killed, get arrested. Yeah, it's not for the youth, it's not for the weak. You should look out for your family, defend your family. You know, Cameroonians have built up this spirit of individualism to the extent where individual interests of people is always above collective interest. And people always consider everything individual before going collective. But in my case, I've always looked at, if we all make our individual interests in consideration of the collective interest, of the public good, of the public interest, it will be better, because this will help us to shape the kind of society we want to live in. And that's why sometimes I go out to protest, because I know I'm risking my life, but I'm doing it for the general interest. So first of all, there's a lot of risk. Secondly, there's a lot of harassment, online harassment, insult, and sometimes, you can as well go to jail, you know. Some of the things I've always said is, or people have said to me is like, oh, you're very lucky, you know, for you to have been questioned at said for your political stance twice, and for you to have had participated in several protests across the country during periods of electoral hold-up, during periods of end the Anglophone crisis, during periods of rise in prices of commodities, unjustified taxes, and the different gates of unjustified expenditures and on accountability that we're having in our government. Yeah, I've raised my voice in one way or the other in offline and online protests, and sometimes lead these protests. So, you know, it's not always very easy, and we get very little support as opposition for the simple fact that those who started the journey of opposing in Cameroon had a good foundation, but along the way it became very shaky in such a way that they laid the foundation for the mutual distrust, fear and suspicion that is existing among Cameroonians today, and the kind of imbalanced relationship that is existing between citizens and the opposition political parties. So the citizens are now like, hey, we supported some of these guys in the 90s and then they did not deliver, they deceived us, and they are joking with our emotions. So how better or how different are you? So, you know, you have to be very consistent. Like, people have to see you on a certain line of action for a long time, consistently doing the same thing and doing it rightly and maintaining your values, your principles, your objectives, and making it clear, transparent to everyone over time for them to trust you. So I understand the people, you know. So yeah, it's quite challenging, but when you have made up your mind for something, you always overcome. So for me, I'm a very optimistic person. Yeah, I always look at the gain and not the pain, and I always look at where we are going to and also look at where we are coming from. So from that angle, I am more than ever determined to always overcome these challenges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how would you rate when it comes to youth civic engagement as well as political participation across African, Cameroon in particular?
Let me start with Cameroon before looking at other African countries. The civic engagement attitude and political participation prevalence of young people in Cameroon is really low. And this is accounted for by, first of all, the education system, which in one way or the other discourages things like civic education, or it's not really taken with the seriousness with which it should be taken, and moral education, given the fact that the rise in social and moral decadence is high, with violence by young people all over. And so you discover that the level of consciousness of young people about their political right, their civic right, their economic right, their social right is really low, because they don't read these documents. You know, young Cameroonians will barely tell you what they know about their rights enshrined in our constitution, or about the electoral code, what it talks about. Some people don't even know when you say elections, universal suffrage, indirect suffrage, constituency, municipality, division. So all these things, these technicalities, they don't know them. And if you don't know these things, you cannot defend them. You can only defend what you know. So the first thing is that the participation is low, and those who are engaging are really at the margin. We need to increase that. When you look at the African continent, we will say some areas are really improving. They are really improving, because when we look at a country like Nigeria, Senegal, or in East Africa or in South Africa, I have a lot of friends there that are young, quite young, below 40, below 35, below 30, that are into high positions. Some are parliamentarians, some are municipal councillors, others are ministers in the government, like one of my friend in Botswana, Bokole Kuwendo, she's a minister, you know, and Tashila Lungu, she's a parliamentarian in Zambia, the daughter of former President Edgar Lungu, you know, and so many other young people across the continent who are doing a lot. But this trend is mostly in English-speaking African countries, because when you go to the French-speaking African countries, the participation is quite low, and that's why we are doing our best with foundations like Lola Leadership Foundations, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung Foundation, Africa for Youth Civic Engagement. We're trying to see how to improve on this trend and make it more youth-centered action.
Okay, what accounts for the low turnout in some countries? You said when you look at countries like the English-speaking part of the African continent, you notice that the turnout seems to be a little bit high.
Yeah.
But in some countries it's low. Why?
Because of the system put in place. Yeah, you can always look at this from the perspective of the political system and the governance structure.
Yes.
When you look at Cameroon National Youth Council, it's been politicized to the extent that if you're not going to align with the party in power, you might not have a position of privilege in the Cameroon National Youth Council, which makes it difficult for Cameroonians who do not necessarily believe in the ideologies of the party in power to be part of the Cameroon National Youth Council. That's a typical example. And so it discourages people who have integrity, self-esteem, and self-principles to be part of such a youth movement. Now, when you go to countries like Chad, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali, this is the same trend, you know. And Burundi, this is the same trend. But when you look at countries like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Tanzania, you discover that they have strong youth institutions that are not influenced by politicians in power. And these institutions are relatively independent from the influence of politicians. And it makes it credible. It makes the youth to be interested. It makes them to feel that their voice counts. So it's just the political structure of each of these countries that makes the situations different and varying.
Okay, now given you've been on the field since 2008, you actually know the challenges that are on ground. And now, how would you see, or how do you see the future of Africa? Now let's look at Cameroon, because Cameroon is your country. How do you see the future of politics when it comes to youth engagement in stuff that matter to their nations?
Cameroon is going to have a moment where young people will take the lead, because the gerontocratic system of the very old people, 65, which is the age of the different arms governing Cameroon, legislative, judiciary, executive, is governing Cameroon. And there will be a moment where we will have the average age of youth, which is the people in the 30s and the late 20s and the early 40s actually governing. But these have to be a general mobilization, sensitization, collective action for it to reach at that level. And that's why people like me are coming to say, I am an example. You could also be an example. And we are motivating young people that politics is not as devilish as you think. It's just a mystification. This politics has just been mystified. The thing has just been made so superficial. So it's all about propaganda, you know. And this propaganda has gone down the brain of so many Cameroonians. So the message here is that let young people take up their responsibility. Let them know that Cameroon of today needs them, and they are the one creating the gap between themselves and the old people. They could close this gap and overtake the old people, because you need to understand these old people so that you can replace them, and you need to understand how they operate so that if they are not there, you are able to actually lead. You know, so many young old people are talking about transgenerational leadership, take over and everything, but are the young people themselves prepared to take this? Because the Fabrice Lena or the Kwakwi Binlo or the Cotton Priswill or the I'm talking about some young people, Joachim Kalkwin event, those young people that are doing some kind of outstanding job, some kind of outstanding work in the different fields are very few, you know. And these very few will not be the one to occupy all the strategic positions if a youth come to be the leader of Cameroon or in power, or a youth is actually given the opportunity to lead. So it's a basket, it's a spectrum, wide range of young people in the 10 regions of this country that will make up a leadership of youthful youth in governance and in politics and in leadership in Cameroon. And across the continent, it's the same trend.
Okay, and now let's look at it from a different perspective. Now you evoke the issue of the gap that exists in Philly. Now you're one of the leaders below 40, if I'm not mistaken.
Of course.
Okay,
I'm
now,
below 35.
Okay, you're below 35. And now we have leaders like yourself across Africa. Now, what could be done to close this gap between those in power? Yeah,
there is a lot as far as civic engagement and political participation is concerned, and there is a lot to do at the level of the media. I appreciate people like you, Sharon, like you take out your time and you invite young people to have a one-on-one conversation about these things. It's very important. It begins from there. When you give the opportunity to the youth, let them show what they got. Can you excel? Can you communicate? Can you talk to the people? Let them show what they got. So it first starts with, you've been given the opportunity, Are you able to manage your capacity wisely with the opportunity that you've been given? That is the first step to close the gap. Because when you have managed this opportunity wisely, then you could be given another higher position. I just gave you my trajectory in PAP. I started as a militant, and from a militant to convention secretary general to campaign manager, and then from there to be in the council of the wise, and then from there to the national secretary general. Before then, I was communication secretary. So I have passed through stages in order to become the secretary general of PAP. I did not just get it one day and then the position of secretary general of PAP is given to me, you know. So it is a track record of what you've been doing professionally and maybe politically in your life that will propel you to that position of leadership. And closing the gap also means that we have to be massive, our number have to increase, and then we don't just have to look at politics per se, we have to look at other sectors. Are we having a conversation among ourselves as politicians with you guys of the media? You are a young lady from the media, you're doing a wonderful job, like so many other young people in the media who are doing wonderful job. We need to have a conversation and see how we can move ahead together, because the Cameroon of tomorrow is not just going to be the young politicians, but also the young media women and men. We have to have conversation with entertainers. We have to bring them close to us and say, hey guys, how will our entertainment sector look like in the next 10 to 15 years? We have to have conversation with the entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs, those CEOs all over the country, you know, and the coaches and the cultural advocates, the human rights advocates, all these different sectors that build up the collective of youth actively engaged in the country need a conversation among themselves. We need youth conversation in Cameroon. We need to keep on dialoguing among ourselves, because it is this dialogue that will necessitate us to bond ourselves, or perhaps take those who are insightful enough in the different sectors of our country to be our representatives when we are having conversation with these old people, to establish our own frivolities, our own objectives, and what we want for the future. It's our future, and then we must not allow it to be mortgaged, and we have to take active role irrespective of our sector to close the gap.
Okay, we're gradually coming to the end. I would like to ask you this question. If you have to pass across a message to Africans, especially the young Africans that are watching and listening to you at this moment, what would that be?
I will say that everyone is unique. Everyone is unique. God created every human being with his or her own uniqueness. We all have eyes, nose, ears, head, mouth, but these things are uniquely shaped in our body. That is diversity. We have to first of all acknowledge and welcome diversity. We have to know that we all have individual roles and responsibilities as human beings existing. And when you find out your passion, you should mold, nurture, groom this passion to become useful to yourself and useful to the society. And remember that you could be the magic person to change your society, because I don't have the magic one, and maybe you don't also have the magic one, but collectively we can ponder to see who has the magic one, or who could be the person to change the dynamics or to take us across the tight moments. Cameroon is at the crossroads, and we need youth to be actively engaged. We have elections in Cameroon in less than 24 months, and the level of youth registered in the electoral list is really low. First of all, you have to get registered. You have to know the process in order to criticize the process. You cannot criticize a process that you are not part of the process. You have not taken part in the process. You have not even been a victim of the lapses of the process. So that's why we always say that it's better to criticize what you know than just assume that it is bad when you're not even part of it. So the first thing is to participate in the process. Get registered, get your card, be on the defensive side, you know, and tell one or two people, you guys do the same. During 2025, we have to look a young, energetic person whose mental capacity can permit him to work for more than 8 hours, who can do travels around the country like I do. And Sharon, I can tell you, between 2021 to 2023, I've traveled to at least 45 divisions of Cameroon. And I can tell you how far north looks like, how east looks like, how northwest, southwest, central, littoral regions of this country looks like, because I've traveled and I've talked with young people, old people, and all class of people to understand the way they are living in order to make proposals. But An old person cannot do these things that I'm doing. An old person cannot have the capacity to travel to Maroua, come back to Yaoundé, go to Boya, go to Lime. No, they don't have that energy. We still have the energy, but I have the feeling that we are micromanaging our energy. We are micromanaging our capacity. We have to put it into full and effective use, but not individually. Collectively, we can achieve more than individually. Yeah, that's my message.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Fabrice Lena, the National Secretary General of the Popular Action Party. I'll say thank you for taking out time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for having me as your guest. It's always a pleasure. And greetings to all the special young people out there doing marvelous jobs in their own different sectors to contribute to nation building and for Africa.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of today's edition of The Guest. I have been Jigs and Napasi for presentation. Meanwhile, program continue. Bye-bye.